Welcome to the Her Story Circle podcast, the podcast that brings you the extraordinary tales of everyday women who are changing the world. I'm your host, Trina Read, and I'd like to acknowledge traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today. I also like to pay my respects to elders, past, present, and emerging. Every week, we dive into the lives, challenges, and triumphs of women from all four corners of the globe. We're here to inspire, enlighten, and connect, sharing stories that uplift and empower. So grab a cup of coffee, settle in, and join us as we explore the incredible journeys of women shaping our future. This is Her Story, where every woman's voice matters. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Her Story Circle. This is Gertrude Mache here in beautiful Melbourne, Australia. And today I am graced with the presence of yet another intriguing woman. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our tribe. Please tell everybody your full name, where you're based, and share your story with us today.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Trina Read. I'm a sexologist from the beautiful Calgary, Alberta, Canada. And my story is, they say that sex sells, but after 25 years as a sexologist, I can say without a shadow of a doubt that society wants to push women's sexual pleasure down. Now, how do I know this? Well, let's go back 30 years when I was 27 years old. I was working in the corporate world, not happy with my job, but not really understanding what my purpose was. And a good friend of mine decided to go on a shaman journey and asked if I would babysit her because on the shaman journey, they were taking peyote. So they needed somebody to take care of them. So I said, sure, of course, I'll support you. So fast forward to the day of the shaman journey. It was a beautiful, beautiful summer night on a local ranch just outside of Calgary. The stars were twinkling. There was a massive bonfire, and all the participants were sitting around the bonfire. And I was sitting off to the side. And the shaman, who they flew up from New Mexico, his name was Jose Stevens, was doing what shamans do around with each participant. Now, what you have to understand is that I'm a pretty typical academic. I've got a very analytical mind, and I'm also very skeptical. So I was really happy for my friend who was going on this journey. But for me, it was like, it was a little bit woo-woo for me. So I was watching the shaman do his thing with that mindset. So, 4 o'clock in the morning comes around, and he had finished all the participants, and he walked up to me and he said, well, do you want me to do you? And I was like, well, why not? I don't believe in this, but there's no bother. So he brought me to the fire. And as the fire was warming my face and the stars were sparkling and the bonfire was,
Trina, your sound has cut out. You're muted again. Some reason your sound is muted. Still muted. Technology is great when it works, when it decides to play up. Okay, it sounds like you're back. You say something?
Yes, I'm saying something. So,
Hey.
about that, I don't know what just happened. So there I was around the campfire, and the shaman was doing his shaman thing. And he was telling me to look at my hands just like this. So I started looking at my hands just like this. And in that instant, I saw the millions of people that I would be helping. And that moment was as real to me as it is this moment right here. Like I saw the people, I really experienced what my purpose was. And so I walked away from that shaman journey a woman on a mission. So I ended up applying to a graduate school that I had no business getting into. I ended up getting a job to support the graduate studies for it was a dream job that I had no business getting. And it was the very first time in my life that I was in the flow. I was like riding the wave of the flow. And it was unbelievable, just magnificent. So in my 30s, I worked really, really hard. I was everywhere. I had this mission of I need to help millions of people around the world with their sexuality, specifically women. So the thing is, because I worked so hard and I had myself out there, I got a lot of opportunities coming to me. But what you have to understand about these opportunities, they were amazing opportunities. I had TV shows wanting me to be their sexpert. I had production companies wanting me to have my own TV show. I did write a best-selling book. So all these magnificent things were happening, but I never quite got it. So I never got the TV show, and I never got to be the sex expert on the daytime shows that I was, so I was almost there, but I never quite got it. Simultaneous to this, I must have done at least 1,000 interviews around the world, TV interviews, radio interviews, everything. And what I learned very slowly, it took me a long time to figure this one out. And that was I could go on to any of these media and talk about anything sex negative. So I could talk about sexual dysfunction. I could talk about how unhappy we are with sex. I could talk about sexual assault, like nasty things like that. At the moment that I started to discuss women's sexual pleasure, I got censored. So from my entire career, I have been censored and blocked and shadow banned and you name it, like to this day. And every day that I woke up, it was a determined pushing water up a hill, and it never got easier. So when I turned 40, I had two little babies. I had, one at 39 and one at 41. So I was trying to do this career with these two little babies. And by the time I was 45, I completely burnt out. And um, for the next 5 years, I was just so disillusioned and disappointed with how could this have turned out like this. I saw it. Every day I remind myself that I am supposed to help millions of people with their sexuality. How did this not turn out the way it was supposed to turn out? So when I turned 50, I just was like, I've had enough. I've just had enough of this. And so I was looking for a new career. So I was like, what can I do? And I remember, I'll never forget, I was walking to my son's school to pick him up from school. It was the middle of winter. It was really cold up here in Canada. I was listening to this audiobook from a financial expert who talks about financial mindset. And in that moment, when I was walking to school, this financial expert, Denise Duffield Thomas, said, it's all about mindset. And suddenly it was like the eureka moment went off in my head, because all the missing pieces that I was trying to figure out over when I was in my 30s and into my 40s, like I had so much knowledge, but I there was a piece of the puzzle missing, and that was mindset. And all of a sudden, it was like dominoes were falling. This idea of, the majority of women, stop enjoying sex in long-term relationships. Why is that? And the reason is that the majority of women cannot ask for what she wants in bed, and she certainly cannot lean into the pleasure that she asked for. What is that based on? Mindset. Another thing, like women in long-term relationships tend to have what is called a delayed sexual response, meaning sex starts and her body might be into it, but her mind is just like somewhere else, So women can't come to conflate this idea of sex being initiated with all these negative feelings about sex. And, so they conflate these two ideas. What is that? It's mindset. So, it occurred to me in that moment that, why I didn't make it, and why I didn't, uh, you know, why I wasn't able to speak to the millions of people around the world that I knew I was supposed to, was because I didn't have this piece of the puzzle. So, now I have, it's, 7 years later, and I have books, and I am starting to get it to go around the world with this information. It's so very important. And if I could give one piece of information to women to walk away with, this is, society considers women second-class citizens when it comes to sexuality, which is why when I ask women, what do you want out of the sexual experience? The majority of women cannot give me an answer. So if you don't know what you want out of sex, you are with the norm. So the thing is, when you decide, when you actually sit down and think about, what is it that I want out of sex? Chances are it's going to be different than what your partner wants to do. And it's really scary to bring that up with your partner because you were told all your life that you cannot do this. But what I know for sure after doing this for 25 years is the majority of partners want to know what you want. And the majority of partners are so happy to make that happen. And I promise you, just by doing that one little thing, you are going to completely change the dynamics of your relationship and your sexual pleasure. And you know what? You are so worth it. And I think that,
Absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much, Trina.
oh, you're
What
welcome. I'm sorry about the microphone issue.
technology is great when it works. When it decides not to work, we can't do much about that.
No.
You have brought up a very inspiring subject today, a subject that most women don't really get to explore, let alone talk about so openly and publicly. So, you shared the powerful story about a walk in winter that shifted your path. Take us back to that moment. What was so special about it? And why do you feel that was the turning point for you?
Well, I had been at it. I had been at this job for, I don't know, 18 years. And, I was making strides, but I wasn't getting anywhere. And it was and, you don't know what you don't know. So I thought I'm very well researched when it comes to women's sexuality. Like I'm reading the research, and I thought, not that I didn't think I knew everything, but I thought I had a really good knowledge base. But the missing piece was mindset. And I got that from a completely unexpected place, which was a financial person, right? Like you would think, sex and finance, the two different things, but I think when it comes to women's financial well-being and women's sexuality, I think there's a lot of similarities there. We can't ask for more, we can't ask for better. We have a lot of barriers and shame that go on in there. And I think, I being able to listen to women's minds, women's inability to ask and and want more and better and be equal, in a different framework, really, it just was just made everything so crystal clear.
Mhm. So, why do you believe society continues to perpetuate the myth that women have a low sex drive?
I think it's because, and this is not putting men down. It's just that we have a very male centric way of having sex, which is fine. So it's orgasm based. It's very mechanical. What so it works for the first year or two that you're in a relationship with somebody, but after that year or two, and the love drugs dissipate, and you're living in reality, suddenly that male centric way of having sex stops working, and nobody knows what to do with that, right? And women don't know how to bring up that she needs something different. Like she's like, I'm not, this isn't doing it for me anymore. And even if a woman is able to consistently have an orgasm with every single sexual experience, it doesn't necessarily mean that her soul is fulfilled by this sex, if that makes sense to you. So I feel like um, women need something different. And
Yes.
generally, not all women, but what women need from the sexual experience is her sensuality to be met. So what I like to say is, when you have the mechanics, when you have this, the orgasm focused sex mixed with the sensuality, suddenly, like, that's where mind-blowing sex ends
Mhm.
up. Like, so it's taking these two worlds and combining them, and that's where that's where everything opens up and everybody's happy.
So, can you explain the concept of delayed sexual response and why it's so common for women in long term relationships?
Yeah, they've actually done studies around this. And like, it was one of those studies where you're like, well, we all knew this, but at least they did the research. So actually, a Canadian sex researcher, what she found was that the longer women are in a relationship, the more her delayed sexual response, meaning sex is initiated. Her body might be cueing to, maybe her body's saying, this would be so good, but her brain is like not there. So it's like she's thinking about her chores. She's thinking about, what she's making for dinner tonight. She's thinking about a fight that she had with a coworker. She's got all these things that are going on in her head, and also a lot of times with women, because we aren't able to say what we want out of the sexual experience, there's also this component of negativity towards being obligated to have a type of sex that we're just not happy with, right? So like all these things are happening in her head, and a lot of times for women, by the time her brain is settled down and she's able to switch from her brain and into her body, the sex is over. And then she's like, okay, wait, I'm here now. Like, I'm here, like, pick me. But it's done. So it adds to her dissatisfaction.
So, what role does mental load play in a woman's ability to feel desire?
Oh, it's huge, like, and it's one of those, things that I think everybody knows, but, a lot of people, a lot of women aren't able to set boundaries around taking that load off. So, there was more research done, and this was done, I don't know, 15 years ago, where researchers found that, when spouses helped with the housework, women felt more open to having sex. And it's just like, I mean, it makes so much sense. But what happened was, it became a quid pro quo. You know what? If he makes the bed, or if he does the dishes, then he expects sex. And then, like, women were just like, no, like, I don't want that dynamic. But what's really going on here is, too many women, me included, I'm not able to say, hey, you know what, like, do the dishes, or, like, do stuff, help out, don't just step over the toys, like, do something. And I think when
Yes.
partners catch on that, when they help out and they take that load off, she's going to have more time and energy to want to have sex.
Yeah. Yeah. It makes such a difference.
Yeah.
Now, you developed a four-part framework for women's pleasure. What inspired its creation? And please share it with the community.
Oh, so my book, You Me Bed Now. This is actually I ripped it off of the Financial Guru because it was just so good, and it's a 5-step framework. And so the first step is to ask yourself, why do you have sex? And like, do you have sex because it brings you pleasure? Or do
Mm,
you have sex because your partner wants it or because you feel like you're obligated to have it? These motivations they're two very different motivations, and they're going to have two
mm,
very different end results to your sexual experience. So I always say to women, if you don't know how you feel about sex, but just when you walk into the sexual experience, you know just keep track of your thoughts before, during, and after, and your thoughts are going to give you a good framework about where you sit in your sexuality spectrum. The second thing is what stops you from having good sex. And
mhm,
chances are women are brought up to be gatekeepers, and we're taught to push pleasure away. Don't get pregnant, don't get an STI, don't be a slut, don't be a whore. Like, so we are given these messages,
mm,
and they profoundly impact our ability to feel and be sexual and lean into our pleasure. And so before you can really tackle being open and sexual and asking for what you want, you have to work through some of these issues. And it's not hard, it's just you have to acknowledge them and face them. Now the third step is to actually decide what you want out of sex. And this is a huge question because
mm,
what women tend to women don't know. The majority of women just don't know. They're like, well, I don't know what I want, and then too many women automatically default to, well, I just want a bigger, better orgasm. And the thing is, orgasms are great, but orgasms are just one piece of
wow,
a woman's pleasure pie. Like, so if we think, if we look at this entire pleasure pie, orgasms are like a little slice of it. So you've
yeah,
got all the rest of, you got like your body, you got your brain. Honestly, so much sex could be so much more interesting when you brought all that sensuality into it. So it's really just tapping into what feels good for you. And I know that's very vague, but it's really just starting to pay attention to what you want. Number 4 is actually asking for the sex that you want. And I tell women, the majority of women do not initiate sex. So if you're not used to you're not used to telling this or initiating sex, it's to
mm,
start small and go
yes.
slow. So, like you can
Some
just,
examples of some of those small, gentle steps that women can take to
yeah.
start connecting with their own bodies.
Yeah, well, if you so the thing is, you can figure out what sense is your preferred sense. So, like there's the 5 senses, and I always forget. So you help me with this. There's sight, there's sound, there's touch, there's smelling, and then there's seeing. Seeing.
Yes.
So for example, you might, like me, I love a good sexy song. A good sexy song just gets me like going. Some women like to read erotica. Some women want to put on like the feel of lingerie on her body. Some women want to light a candle, and the smell of the candle helps wake up her senses. So these once you zone in on what your preferred sense is, uh,
Mm-hmm.
you can, when you know that it's time to have sex, you can tap into this. It's just so easy to tap into this, like go to the bathroom and read a couple pages of erotica, like get yourself, give yourself permission to get yourself in the mood. It's
Mm-hmm.
okay.
Yeah.
And I would say when initiating with your partner, you can do small things like, send your partner a sexy text, or give them a kiss. But the thing is, a lot of women have this idea that as soon as their partner touches them, they freeze up. It's an automatic freeze up because it means sex is going to happen. And that's, for a lot of women, that's just ingrained. So I would say, in the learning to ask for what you want, it's
Yeah.
understanding how you are interacting and reacting with sex. And finally, the fifth one is to learn how to lean into the pleasure that you ask for. So with pleasure, we just assume that pleasure is biological. And if you go on to the internet, and I did, and you search for, how do women learn to have pleasure, every
Hmm.
single, like, there's millions of articles
Okay.
about women having an orgasm, but there's
Mm.
virtually zero articles about women's sensual pleasure and leaning into her sensual pleasure. So, you know,
Right.
leaning into your pleasure is a learned skill. It's going to take time. You have to, like, acclimate your body to allow, instead of pushing pleasure away, which we've been taught all our life, you're
Yes.
acclimating your body to, allowing the good feelings. And, it's going to take time. But as I said, women, you are worth it. We're all worth that.
So, how can partners support women without adding pressure or expectations?
I would say it starts with a conversation, and every sex expert under the sun says, communication, communication. But it is really the bedrock of, you starting. And I would say the majority of couples are not comfortable, sitting down across the table, talking about their sex life. So I would just say that there are so many resources out there that can help you. So, like, something you can do is, look up a video on YouTube. You can go onto my channel, the Pursuit of Pleasure podcast, and I've got, all these videos. And or you can have, look up an article, and then you can share that podcast or that article with your
Yes.
partner, or you can listen to it together. And that's the start of the communication. And I think, a lot of times when it comes to sex, people are on the defensive. So it's not your, the conversation is, I love you, I want us to be close, and I want us to have a happy, intimate, emotionally fueled, soulful marriage, until we die. Like, this is what I want out of this. And in order for that to happen, we need to do these things. And every partner is going to be on board with that kind
Mhm.
of conversation.
I like that. So, how does cultural conditioning shape women's understanding of their own pleasure?
Oh, it's huge. Like, what's interesting to me is, I was interviewing Dr. Laura Mintz, who's a very well-known sex therapist in the US.
Hmm.
She's been doing this for 40 years. And she said to me, you know what? I have been saying the same thing for 40 years. And she said, just as, at the moment that she stops, she thinks everybody's caught on to this, the new
Yes.
generation comes, and she has to say it all over again. So,
Um,
I feel like, as far as society has come with women's sexual pleasure, we're still not there yet. So I am still having to be very careful about everything I post on social media. I have to be careful about my language. I have to be I am always, I'm always afraid that I'm going to be censored. For the amount of times that I have been thrown off Facebook or whatever, because I'm talking about women's sexual health. I'm not being salacious. I'm actually kind of like vanilla in the whole sexuality spectrum. Like, I'm not saying anything really rude, and yet, um, the powers that be just want to shut me down. And I would
yeah.
just say that for women, we're given so many messages about, like, you can't be too sexual, but you have to be sexual enough, like, so what is the right amount of sex? Like, I don't know. What is it? I still don't know what that answer is. Like, and so women are never going to win this conversation.
Oh my gosh. Now, what is one myth about women's sexuality that you wish we could erase forever?
Uh, I would say that women aren't sexual. Women are super sexual. Estrogen is a very powerful hormone, and I just think too many women feel that she's broken because she's having a male centric way of having sex. And so she just, like, we all think that that's the only way to have sex. And
Yes.
once women step into what she wants, suddenly the floodgates are going to be open and she is going to want sex all the
Time.
time.
Yeah.
So, like, I feel like women just assume that, as soon as we are a couple years into a relationship, that part of our lives
It's
gets put to
gone.
the side. But
Yeah.
it's not true. It's just not true. That in fact, I feel like when you've been with somebody for a long time and you trust each other and you can be vulnerable with each other, that's when the magic happens. That's when you can really lean into your pleasure and really ask for what you want,
Yeah.
and the two of you get to spend the rest of your lives in this amazing sexual circumstance. Like
Mm,
honestly, it couldn't get any better.
it's so true. So, if you could leave women with one message about reclaiming pleasure and power, what would that be?
It would be, you know, decide that your sexuality is decide that you are an equal and that your sexuality matters just as much as your partner's, and asking for what you want is just a normal everyday thing. It's
Yeah.
just something that of course you're going to ask for what you want. Of course your partner wants you to ask for what you want,
Yeah.
and watch your relationship and your sexuality and your own self-worth just open up
Everything
and flower.
changes.
Everything changes with that one
Mhm.
little thing.
And I think women need to be taught all about this sooner rather than later in life. Unfortunately, for most of us, we were brought up in very restrictive cultures, upbringings, whether it's religion or just the cultural norms around sex. We went in blind with no idea how to navigate this space. So hopefully, younger women get this information sooner. I think that would really help.
I do. I think it's a mix of, young women are like, there's YouTube. So there's, a lot of young sexperts that, are giving really great information for, the younger people. But it's like in a fight right now with porn. So like there's a lot of negative stuff that kids are learning, so like I think the kids are getting mixed messages, and I think that's, so we had our challenges, and
Yes.
this is
They have theirs.
this is their challenge.
Yeah. Well, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. Thank you so much for coming to share your knowledge with us today. I take it anyone can reach out to you. I've got your website at the bottom of the screen in case you are somebody who's out there looking for some support, looking for some help. Please don't try and do it alone. There's experts who can help you every step of the way. Thank you so much for the interview.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you to everybody who tuned in. I'll be back again tomorrow, everybody, with yet another amazing guest. In the meantime, have a fantastic day, morning, or evening, wherever you are in the world, and bye for now. Dr. Trina, thank you again. Thank you for tuning into the Her Story Circle podcast. I hope today's story has inspired you to believe in the power of our stories and the difference you can make in the world when you use your voice. I'm Gertrude Mache, and it's been an honor to share this space with you, where voices from all walks of life come together to weave a rich tapestry of diverse perspectives. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast to help us share these stories with more listeners. Follow us on social media by looking for the Her Story Circle podcast for more updates. And join us tomorrow for another episode filled with courage, resilience, and empowerment. Remember, your story matters, and together we're building a stronger, more inclusive world. Until next time, keep making her story.